So in the last week, scanning all the crazy articles and newsworthy items on AI, we had things from one side of the spectrum to the other. We had the Pope making a whole proclamation, a sweeping statement on artificial intelligence. So religion on the one hand. We had on the other hand, Meta and Mark Zuckerberg laying off thousands and thousands of people and then also repurposing some of, well, other thousands of people towards AI. And he said he takes full responsibility. He didn't look too sad about it. So layoffs on the other side.
That's not enough. No.
Well, because the yacht was waiting, right? So,
Yeah.
uh, sorry. And then research in the middle, like with what Google DeepMind is doing, and the progress on agents. I think the quote from the CEO of DeepMind, right, was that these agents today are a practice run for what's going to happen with AGI. So we've got religion, layoffs, research, practice run for total, acceleration of artificial general intelligence that surpasses humanity's capabilities. And at first glance, it seems like completely separate, yet, of course, the common strain being AI type of stories. But underneath them all, you and I were reflecting, there's a common kind of signal going on, right? And AI is definitely moving so fast, but our leadership systems from institutions such as religion or organizations, certainly government, it's moving faster than our leadership capacity or our leadership institutions know how to handle. And it's starting to become a broader call for what kind of guardrails do we want to put in place to steer this amazing technology for the betterment of humanity. And now I know a lot of people have been calling out for safety measures for some time, but we're starting to see new voices on the scene in louder and louder calls for action. What do you see as some of that common signal underneath each of these disparate stories?
Well, the common signal isn't so much the technology, it's the speed. I think it's the hyper reactive need for accumulation of this technology and the essentially what one of my girlfriends said, it's being shoved down her throat like religion on a Sunday from a Baptist preacher. And she said, I was like, tell me that one more time. And she said, when you're on Sunday school and you're just getting it shoved down, you're not asking for it. You're not agreeing to it. It's not, a co-creation situation. It is showing up on your computer. You are told to use it. The speed is at a mock rate, and it's also not a group decision, right? This is a decision made by a very few amount of people, and we could think of it in buckets, right? Tech in general decided they were going to have this arms race for AI and AGI, and here they are building it. And then enterprises putting it in and installing it on everyone's computer and saying go without the discernment, the courage, the co-creation, the understanding of what they're doing, or frankly, the blueprint of what good looks like. So if we are successful, how do we know we're successful? Because we have the end in mind. Right now, they have essentially just dollar signs in their eyes, like an old fashioned cartoon with ching dollar signs. And they're like, we'll buy that. We'll buy that. And it feels reckless, scary, and overly fast to a lot of people. And I want to acknowledge that there are times when I feel the same. And then there are times when I'm like, well, it's going to self-regulate for a number of reasons. A lot of them are environmental and like supply chain reasons. Also, cost will change dramatically soon, and that will slow the pace. So, but for me, the message is the speed is what is so dysregulating to people. If this were a thoughtful transition into this technology with a lot of governance, with a lot of training, and when I say training, education on leadership and all of the components, brain health, cognitive offloading, decision discernment, creative skepticism, all of the things that we talk about that are skills, If that was put in place prior, I don't believe we would have the Pope calling for a halt on AI development. I think we would have an understanding of the power of this tool and a collective human shield to use it with discernment and thoughtfulness.
Yes. And here's the thing. We said from the beginning, we're not either pro or anti AI. Like it is a reality, it is here. It is just moving at a precipitously fast pace beyond even what we cognitively, we knew we were on the exponential curve, but like living it day to day, it's so crazy fast that these questions, they've been on the horizon. They have been in voices, very important, well articulated, well researched, well organized voices in many corners. And yet, not as the speed increases, I think there's questions under the news items on this, right? So, like with the Pope being one of the most prominent, and we're people who use AI as quickly as we can to help bring this work to larger and larger numbers of people with a tiny team, with a small, capable team, when it would have taken dozens of us in the past, right? And so there's some benefits, right, that we want to cultivate. But when the Pope stands up and is calling the question, it's like, who, aside from the Pope, and I grew up Catholic, so I get the value of that. What other voices, who has the moral authority, and what role do we each play to actually speak for what we as humans need and want with AI? There's so many that don't have a voice on the scene. Now there are some countries. Is it Malta? No, where are they giving like every single child like access to AI in order to advance AI literacy in the country to be able to build that in? There are universities, the University of Florida, I know, revamped their entire curriculum to put AI even in, like, if you want to be a philosophy or a religion major, you have to talk about AI and ethics. Like, that's an interesting, they revamped it years ago because they saw what was coming. And I know NVIDIA invested in that curriculum to help, no matter what your major was, to start thinking about these larger questions, because AI is already shaping not just work and leadership, it's shaping war, the current war, how AI is being utilized for targets and the rest of it. It's shaping learning, it's shaping even aspects, healthcare, dignity, so many different aspects. And so that moral, it's that there's a safety factor, but there's also this like moral imperative that seems to really need a wider dialogue. But how do we organize fast enough around that? Because the speed is happening without the stewardship that's
The
needed.
speed is, yes, the speed is happening without stewardship, and people have opinions and thoughts on it, but feel helpless that there is nothing that they can do.
Yes.
How does a person change or impact governance and state, federal, global laws on how this technology is deployed? I think that's where a lot of the helplessness comes in, and the frustration and the need for calls to action from leaders that have a significant amount of clout and political power, especially when you look at the current US government structure. The incentive structure is not to have any or have very little guardrails. That is the incentive structure that's been set up and that's been agreed upon. So until we have a change there, in my humble opinion, we won't have a huge change in the halting or slowing down of this type of work. And much of the argument, Leanne, is
Mm,
always, well, if we don't win this race, another country will.
right.
That is an easy look over there, so that you aren't looking where it's really happening. And where it's really happening is in every single company that feels pressured to over index on AI and under index on humans. And really, in our opinion, investing in human leadership. That is the work that needs to be done now. And really mission-driven companies are scrambling to hire firms like ours. And they want to provide that for their employees because they don't want to see their culture extracted through overuse of AI. So although we are neutral, yes, it's here, these are definitely cautionary tales when someone with the, the impact that the Pope, the reach that the Pope has, my heart is lightened when I hear his words because I care just like you do about anyone who has lack of equality or feels like they don't have a voice. And this is one of those things that does make you feel fraught and a little frustrated with this technology.
So what's interesting is there's actually quite a lot you can do with free tools. Some, I spend at least an hour a day trying to expand my AI skills in many different ways. Aside from how I'm using my AI collaborators for the actual work, I'm trying to try different platforms, try different tools, etc. And if you have all the money in the world to have a subscription here, a subscription there, connect this to that, have this plugin, etc., you can do amazing things. It's always brought up questions of access for those who don't have the ability to have these subscriptions. What can they create on free models? And more things are actually possible on the free model. So there is some democratization of opportunity that I don't want to lose sight of too for those that may not have had it through traditional means. This may be a way to leapfrog, but without larger, and this has been the call. There's been, I think, with the AI documentary and with other safety and security focused organizations, there's a lot of focus on how we create a global movement and agreement that is across the board where governments pressure the organizations and there's basically an agreement to slow down the progress. But because the likelihood of that is so low and it's so convenient to focus on either another country or another company or another competitive advantage, the likelihood of that happening is slim according to a lot of people's assessment. So this is why you hear a lot of speakers talking about Mo Godot and others, that it's going to get far worse before it gets better, unless we can create, there's a lot more of us as humans than those that have created this that could start the dialogue on many different levels in every different forum. What can we do so that this expands reach in a way that expands access, but also looks at the positive impact of humanity? Because there is so much abundance and so many possibilities. And when DeepMind says that this is a practice run for AGI, I think of practice as it's a dress rehearsal, right? And in a dress rehearsal, you're practicing, you're getting feedback, you're running your lines, you're trying it again, you're interacting, you're getting the right tone, right? But we don't have a whole lot of those feedback mechanisms to what if it's just sort of running without a whole lot of broader feedback from all the diversity of voices that are going to be impacted by it? And it's going to be on full display before we have a way to influence it.
Yeah.
So,
and the missing piece is, why don't we have a voice in the collective decision of, deploying this technology? That is, and yes, this is, in my view, Leanne, this is Pandora's box being opened. So the box is open, the lid is ajar, things are escaping. What do we have in our toolbox, in our human toolbox, to manage the dysregulation, the disruption, and frankly, the sort of upheaval of how we see ourselves and how we see each other and what we value? And I think one of the things that will be defining is that, a lot of things come down to money. I know that's a
Yeah.
surprise. It's a surprise land, but a lot of things come down to money. Follow the incentive structure. And the incentive structure, I think that will be helped by this is humans valuing work from humans, not the AI slop that will flood in over the next few years, but that discernment of I like work that's been thoughtfully created and that it has the human touch. That's not to say that AI can't be used, but used in a way that is generative, not extractive. So I think one of my, bright spots in this is the trend under the trend that, AI will take over a lot of things. Yes, but also make human work more valuable, make leadership that is centered on deep, meaningful, felt values
Yeah.
and culture to add value to the corporation, to bring the most profitability to the corporation, which is what the CEOs and leaders are there to do through work of human beings together in collaboration. So I think that that is one of the bright spots I'm holding on to.
Yeah, and it's easy to feel a little bit down or hopeless when you look at the broader picture of like how do we create this like stewardship along with the speed at a global level, right? And that's an important dialogue to look at. But we each have a lot more control or power over our own environment and our own. Start with your own family, with if you're a leader, the group that you're leading, if you're higher up in an organization, the part of the organization that you're leading, if you have influence on organizational policies. There are so many ways that we can be very thoughtful about how are we anchoring into our values, as you said. What are the aspects of embedding AI into our workflow that are not only efficient, but we want to protect certain things that are uniquely human, that provide meaning, purpose, value. And it's not just that um, it's the nice thing to do, but it's actually the way that you create intrinsic motivation, a sense of purpose, a sense of the unique creativity that we as humans can bring to any challenge before us. And you protect that creative capability of humans. By the way, I saw this thing on it was a whole post using all the typical AI. You can tell now when things are AI social media posts, and it's like, the thing that keeps me up at night when AI doesn't sleep, or I kept sitting with this, it doesn't sit, and it was just a funny like linking of all these different phrases together, and it was talking about remember what it is to be human, remember the human lived experience that we have, and that's the value that we can bring, and don't outsource that part of the work that can never really know the power of what it means to be human and the creative possibilities that come from that. And if we use that kind of lens for the work that we have, the teams that we build, how we do that within our families, we can really actually, I think, find the right balance in I'm going to use AI in this way that really expands ideation. It's a thought partner in challenges, and at the same time, I'm really not only preserving but igniting that creative spark that I have within us. And I think we've talked about it a lot, but there are certain professions that are going to get this hit right over the head. Well, they already are, but the creative, the marketing area, like that's where the creative impulse of humans is central. And I think they're going to have some interesting insights for us along the way because they're grappling with this real time before good chunks of what their work has been gets outsourced to AI.
So I have a friend, speaking of creatives, I have a friend who she's a CMO for a really important company, and she has been getting pitches like crazy to get rid of her entire marketing team. She's been encouraged to let go of 70% of her marketing team, keep
70?
30%. Yeah, so just that everything could be done quickly. This doesn't take into account the loss of innovative ideas or clever ideas. It means to me in many ways Everything will look the same. By the way, you'll never see another typo again. And then you'll be so excited when you see a typo because that means somebody typed it and that it wasn't done by AI. So long live the typo. You know,
Yeah,
it's
right.
so you're going to be looking for indications that this was made by humans. And I was, following the adoption cycle with her and having this conversation, and we were going through, it wasn't a coaching, but it was more of a, well, let's play this out. Let's say you do hire this firm, you release, 7 of your FTEs, you now have that onto your balanced budget, but you also are getting something that isn't all that ingenious. It is you've let go of those people. The institutional knowledge has walked out the door. And what if it doesn't work? What if you aren't getting what you need, the traction you need, the human in this creative space, and you're then rehiring all of them, and you've lost years of work that cannot be regained because those people have gone on.
Not to mention the human impact on people's lives and their livelihoods, et
Of
cetera,
course.
right?
Of course.
Um,
You would have to deliver that. And by the way, we're replacing you with non-human workers, which I mean would make anyone's stomach turn. And the Pope's message, I love this, who gets protected, who gets prepared, who gets included, who gets displaced, who gets to decide what kind of future we are practicing for.
mhm.
And I want this to be a collective decision of humanity, not a decision of the few that are the gods of Silicon Valley that are in their bunkers deciding AGI is here in 2029. I reject that narrative and I don't want anything to do with that. I want to be an active collaborator in building the future we want. So, with that said, Leanne, that means leading the vision of strong decision making skills, not eroding cognitive skill sets. It's a very important goal. What are your thoughts?
Now more than ever is the time to double down on conscious, deeply human leadership. How we are awakening, remembering, um, advancing, supporting the growth of real human values, discernment, decision making, dialogue, courage, co creation, tapping into the human lived experience, that wisdom, all the stuff that we always talk about, Gretchen, but actually in real practice in organizations. And frankly, I'm trying to do it with my kids. They're always like, oh my God, here comes mom with her AI thing again. But literally, um, they're starting to see in stuff that we're trying to create together, how do you bring the best of humanity forward while using these AI tools? It's not an advocacy for, because I saw after the Pope's talk, they had a news piece on in one part of the country, and there were a number of people who were saying that's why I'm completely anti AI. I'm going off grid. I'm learning to grow sprouts, and it's like I like sprouts too, and I want to be as close to nature as possible. But I just think that we live in a reality right now where learning to use the tools to actually support humanity while augmenting our humanity is the best path forward. Now, it requires holding two things simultaneously at once. It requires seeing the potential, but also developing the not only but the potential in the technology, but the potential in us. I don't hear enough talk about that. I don't hear enough focus on that. I don't hear enough parenting conversations around that. Of course, I'm mostly listening in my own house, but how can we take charge in our own domain, whether that's your family, your team? You don't have to even be in a position of leadership, but start calling the questions on how we can take the speed of these new tools that are coming out, apply them in unique test cases, but for the betterment of those around us. And I bet with that dialogue and with that practice, we're going to start to see more and more examples. And then we're going to raise a generation of kids over the next couple of years who are going to start asking and demanding different kinds of things in the society that they're part of. I firmly believe that if we're in the practice run right now, we have to be thinking about what kind of leaders we are and who we are teaching the next generation to become. And a big piece of that is our humanity.
I think it's the most precious thing we can do to bring to the equation is our humanity. And remember that. And to be witness to humanity when you see it and to point it out um, and what's the word I'm looking for? To applaud it. When we work with mission-centered leaders, it's a beautiful thing because the paradox is held. This technology can really help us do better, but we're not here to just turn that, org chart upside down and get rid of as many full-time headcount as possible. And that requires I think it requires some discernment. I think what we will see are the companies that are on the extractive side, they're going to burn out. I don't see that the long-term survival of companies like that because I believe that humans want to work with humans. Ask anyone who's had to dial 4 different phone numbers when trying to get a human, and you're just saying, I just want a human on the phone. So I believe that humanity that you are calling for will win out, and our behaviors need to support it along the way. So I'm so excited about the conversation and the work we're doing, and thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think for each of us, it may seem big to think about how can I impact stewardship when the speed is moving this fast. Start small. Start creating something with your family members and your kids on a free tool that you decide it's a summer project and something that you're going to, or a winter project, depending on what part of the world you are. And you're going to collaborate together to create something using these tools, but with humanity in the center. That itself will start to spark a dialogue on what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be deeply human? What do we want to preserve? What do we want to remember? And how are we going to use these tools to help us have a better life? I'd be curious to see what projects people come up with, and I'd love to see in the comments below what people learn so we can all learn from one another.
I agree with you. Thank you so much, Lan. So good to see you.
Likewise. Okay, see you next time, Gretchen. Thanks for spending this time with us. If something landed, sit with it. That pause is actually where the real work happens. And if you're navigating this shift at your organization and you'd like to bring this conversation inside your walls, go ahead and find us at deeplyhumanleading.com. If today's episode landed with you, share it with somebody that you think could really use it. The ripple starts there. Until next time, stay curious and stay human.